Hi, everyone. This is Caroline with the Expat Interviews, Thriving Abroad, where I get an opportunity to share with you people, not just people, but beautiful, amazing, wonderful people that are living their best life all across this beautiful globe in places that maybe you've always thought of you'd like to visit or live, but they're going to share their personal stories with you. And today I'm really excited to share a story from someone that you're going to fall in love with once you hear her amazing story. Thank you so much, Ouga, for joining me and sharing your story today. Now, how exciting is it that you are originally from Morocco? And we do expats, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to share with you because, you know, the expat journey is not just from the US to another country. There are many expats leaving their countries from all over, going to live in other places. So your experience is just as important as, you know, say someone from, you know, other more famous countries. So I'm really excited to hear what your transition has been like. So you from Morocco, what part are you from originally?
I was born and raised in Rabat, which is the capital. And then I studied somewhere in the middle in the mountains. But my parents are both ethnically from the south.
That's wonderful. And my daughter, who is a big Moroccan fan, she's been to Rabat, so she's going to be just tickle pink to hear the story. And so what was it like, first of all? Were your parents travelers? I mean, was that something that was taught at home or around you, your friends, a family, as far as moving, going to other places?
Absolutely not. Actually, I would think that my parents did one big leap, and that was essentially it. So my mother was born in the south, and her big leap was going to college in Rabat, where I was born. Then after that, I wouldn't say that they were extremely adventurous. They did move to another city when they got married, but that was essentially it. My father is originally ethnically from the south, but he moved to Casablanca as a baby to live with his uncle. And again, his only move was to the middle of Morocco, where he and my mother lived for a few years. But they were the complete opposite of wanting to travel. I remember actually my parents at the time, back in the 80s, it was very easy to go, for instance, to Europe because they were both educated. All they needed to do is to say, yes, I could have this job, and then they would go. And none of them wanted to leave. So they were actually very sedentary.
That is interesting because we see, you know, it is one thing seeing people like, for example, the country of Morocco, when we see pictures and movies that they've made about life there, but it really is different, you know, once you have a chance to really get to know, you know, the country. You know, it almost seems like it's not part of Africa, even though it is. You know, we kind of separate it. We just see it as this exotic place with, you know, lots of carpets and just this, you know, really just an exotic location. And to think that somebody would leave that exotic country to go somewhere else sometimes would just be kind of surprising to people. So, so you're in school. What prompted you to leave?
I did not leave right after school. So this is also something where you have different approaches. A lot of people in Morocco who end up going abroad actually end up going right after they have they finish high school, because they go to college in France typically, and then they stay there. In my case, actually, as I said, my parents are so sedentary that even though I had the opportunity after high school to go to France to study, I was accepted in a very prestigious place there. My mother said, no, don't go abroad. So they actually held me down in the country. And I went to college in Morocco. I worked in Morocco for over 6 years until I've reached that ceiling where it was just impossible for me to get further promoted. I was getting too expensive for the country, essentially, because that is one of the things that people forget about, is that if you're really good, it's not about being good in your area. It's about being good by any objective standard. And I was actually good by many objective standards, which meant that I commanded remuneration or compensation packages that by the standards of pay in Morocco were unachievable. And so I eventually reached the point where I could not get a job that would match my compensation if I were to leave my company that was a multinational. And that was when you just become a bit too much of a big fish in a teeny tiny bowl.
So you started thinking about life abroad.
Yes, I felt stuck.
And what was your thought process? How did you start thinking about, okay, where am I going to go? What was your criteria for,
yes,
for finding another place?
To be honest, I had two waves of expatriation. The first one was less thought of because it was almost as I need to get out of here. The problem was that once I had reached that ceiling, I was also very good at a very niche thing. And I was not sure whether or not I would be able to sell my abilities elsewhere. And you get that imposter syndrome of thinking, yes, I have been the best among everybody I know, but then now I'm going to a bigger pool. So how do I stack? How would people assess me? And so for my first move from Morocco to Belgium, I was really looking to move, but actually I did not do the move intentionally. I was headhunted actually by a specialist company, and the discussion process took over a year for me to be really convinced to move. And it was a very rough move. I mean, I moved in with 2 suitcases. Now, the next wave of moving, I knew more what to expect because I had gone through quite some challenging experiences when I was in Belgium. So my next move was a bit more researched because the first one, I had a nice offer. I liked the people. I said, okay, let me go. Next time around, I actually learned you need to really look into where you're going, look around, see how people are living. Does it mesh with your values? Does it mesh with who you are? And that's why my second move to London, I had actually visited London many times until before I did the move. Whereas for Brussels, I had seen it probably with the interviews.
I wanted to go back just a second to your family. Did you get any pushback from your parents? They're not accustomed to traveling abroad or living abroad. Did they give you a little bit of pushback as far as, are you sure about this? What are you doing? Don't go. Did you receive any type of hold on from your family?
In that regard, 2 things played in my favor. The first one was that I had been quite accomplished in my career up to then. So it was not the same, the parents-children dynamic, right? When I wanted to go after high school, I was still under their roof. They still felt that responsibility, and them preventing me from going abroad was them protecting me. Now, having had more than 6 years of working experience, I was not going as their child being left alone in the exploring the big dark world. It was more as I'm an adult and I'm making that. And the second thing was also just the way I went about it, in that it was not a consultation. It was essentially, look, I'm going, wish me luck. And they were, and the reaction would have been exactly that. Very best of luck, proud of you. So it was a different dynamic. But I said I was lucky because there is still a gendered approach to anything seen as being adventurous. So if it were another family and I were like a cis male, no discussion. Traditional gender role for a woman, why would you leave your parents? Why would you leave your family? Why would you leave your country? You are seen as being too risk-taking, too libertine, etc. Whereas a man would be seen as bold. They're going out there, getting opportunities. We admire that, you see. So there is still that gendered approach to what is good or bad about going abroad.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic too. That's very interesting that you brought that up. So now you are in England, in London. What is your major? What is your background? How did you get to be so in demand in your career?
My major has nothing to do with what I'm working, what I'm doing, but it actually, I would say that the path is always me being very stubborn. Whenever somebody tells me you can't do this because you're a woman, because you're Moroccan, because you're black, all these things. So when I was very young, I was told that the most difficult course to do was math and science in high school. So that's what I did, and I got top grades. And then the college that I went to, I was told by my father, my father actually said, you cannot get in there because it's for rich people. Who do you think you are? You're not Rockefeller's daughter. So I decided to just plead my case and get a scholarship. And that was essentially the first time they gave a merit scholarship, because they used to give scholarships to people from the region. But it was more of like a social responsibility kind of thing. Whereas for me, I actually said, no, I don't want you to do a social responsibility thing. I want you to see that I'm the best and that I will be lifting the standard. And I managed to get a merit scholarship because I was told you can't do this, go to this college. And in this college, I heard that software engineering was the toughest major to do. So I did it because I'm stubborn like that. And it was the same for my jobs. So the job that I had in Morocco, I was told that that company does not hire from my school because we're blacklisted, and it's the best employer in the country. So I joined it because I wanted to prove people wrong. And the job in Brussels, the company that I joined at the time was #1 on Glassdoor at the time worldwide. And people said, oh, this is like the dream company to join. So I said, okay, watch me. And I got in. And so now I'm in strategy consulting, but it's, again, because it's seen as being elite and blah, blah, blah. And so for me, I would say that the best way to motivate me is to tell me that something is beyond my means or my reach and I'm not there, you know.
I love your rebel spirit. That's awesome. That's, I guess, in a way, it's a kind of a reverse way of telling, asking the universe for something, and you have it set in your mind, and I'm going to do this no matter what. So I love that. I love that spirit. So how long have you been living in England?
In 2 months, it will be 3 years now.
Okay.
Yes.
And what has that been like for you?
It has been a much, much better experience than Brussels. Because the thing is, what happened to me is that when I moved to Brussels, 4 months later, my sister moved to London. And I remember the first time I went to visit her and I set foot in London, I said, I made a mistake. I should have been in London. I should not have been in Brussels. And so it was not an easy thing. I spent the following 2 years trying to go to London, right? And so for me to finally be able to be in the city where I wanted to be was really a validation of my efforts, because I have gone through some really tough periods. When I was in Brussels, I've had times where I didn't have money. And there was a time I had €7 left and I needed to choose whether or not to eat. I had some very, very tough spots. And now in London, I feel that my life has been improving. And every now and then I have to remind myself that whenever I have a rough week, etc., it's because I wanted to be in this environment. It's competitive, but it's also very rewarding. And it's just about remembering every now and then, looking outside in the window and remembering that I should feel blessed to have been able to make it.
That's beautiful. Now, I know that London is a very cosmopolitan city. There's people from all over the world, Muslim, all backgrounds, all religions. But do you feel a need as a woman, as a Black woman, as a Moroccan, as an African Black Moroccan woman, do you feel a need to continue to embrace your identity, your cultural identity, or is it just a very accepting city where everyone can go about their business and be who they are?
I think it is an extremely accepting city. That is one of the reasons why I moved. It's because if I look at the contrast with my previous experience, Before, I almost felt the need to tone everything down because you feel that you stand out so much. So I was told left, right, and center that actually Brussels is very cosmopolitan. It had a lot of nationalities that were all European. Being African, you just stand out in the streets. You're too of everything, too loud, too visible, too different. In London, you have such a variety of people, and you walk in the street that for me, it wasn't about toning down or up, or it was simply that I didn't have to think about it. And for me, that is a privilege. The privilege of not having to think about how you come across, that was such a weight lifted off of my shoulders that I didn't realize how heavy it was before. Always being on your guard and thinking, okay, so should I cross the street? Should I make eye contact? And all these kind of things. And so I feel that it is liberating because as a Black woman, you grow up and you go to certain places where you are aware of how you come across, whether you react, how you react. You know, it's one of those situations where you can't win. Whichever situation you pick, you know, you fall into some stereotype or misconception. And here I feel that although you, of course, you will have some people with certain views, in general, I feel I have my guard down a bit more.
So it's, I guess your advice somewhat would be, find a place where your identity is not so upfront and center as maybe, like you said, if you were in Brussels or some other city where you obviously stand out and you have to do more work with maintaining your cultural identity.
Yes, and that depends on the energy level that you want to put in. Some people want to be pioneers and first movers and go into a place that is extremely hostile to you, because it is also part of what gives you energy or part of what you want to accomplish in life. But sometimes you have to be transparent with yourself and not necessarily be the person bearing that burden. Sometimes you just want to have your individuality without having to fend off so many layers of assumptions about you, you know?
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about you're a skincare expert lover. You're a tea addict.
Yes.
And you're in the perfect city to be addicted to teas, right?
Yes.
How has that been? Is it an incredible experience shopping the food in London in general?
Yes, I think this is an extension of what we just discussed now. Because so many people fit, there isn't anything you would crave and not find. And it's not one of those things where you need to go to some obscure place to find an ingredient. It's everything is out there, everything is displayed proudly, and people don't feel again that they need to tone things down. So for me, going to the Saturday market, I am lucky to have a market really just a couple meters down, and it's these experiences where you go and you talk to people. It just feels that everybody embraces you. And I like going to a cheesemonger and just talking about the different food. I like going when I select the tea and say, look, last time I liked this. My favorite tea, I discovered it 3 years ago when somebody at Fortnum's actually suggested it. He said, I know that you really like Earl Grey. Why don't you try Countess Grey? It has additional orange rinds. And that was life-changing. I've been drinking liters of that, you know? So just these discussions and the abundance of things around you because of the richness of what every person brings from their culture is something that was quite exhilarating to be in. It gives you energy.
Have you found yourself embracing any of the British culture in the time that you've been there? Or are there things that you're doing now that kind of you say, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm British?
Bizarrely, yes, that surprised me quite a lot. So growing up, my father used to buy. My father was always very thrifty, so he was really good at finding things at thrift shops, etc. Right, and he would bring us these wool jumpers, tweed, and all these things that I hated as a child. And it was quite shocking for me. Just recently I opened my closet and I realized I am reverting to my childhood clothing, because it was thrifted from Europe and brought in, right? That's why it was very, very influenced. And Dad really looked at quality, and quality meant it was natural fibers, etc., etc. And when I opened my closet, that was just a couple of days ago, I realized I had so much tweed and these sweaters. This is a Scottish cashmere, and I noticed that actually my wardrobe, if I were to survey my wardrobe, the share of British brands in it has been increasing. And I find myself also having different types of raincoats and coats, because we have all kinds of rain. So it was quite interesting to see that transition. It has surprised me. And now I actually have scones with jam and cream that I'm going to have later. So yeah, I feel like I didn't realize, it just got into me, and I really enjoy that. I love their love of the sun and the outdoors. The moment there is a ray of sunshine, everybody's out. They all walk outside, and that's something I did not used to do. And now I'm trying consciously to embrace that side, because their ability to go out in all kinds of weather is something I'm getting there. But the sun, sometimes I would go and like a whole week with beautiful sunny weather and not go out. So now these are things that I really want to embrace, because they really do make the best out of whatever nature gives them.
That is beautiful. That is nice to, especially when you're in a, in a situation where you're not allowed to do the things that you're accustomed to doing. So you're now an experienced expat. Do you see yourself in the future? I mean, is England it for you? Do you see yourself maybe venturing out into other parts of the world? What does the future look like for you?
For now, I have been thinking the next 2-3 years. I still want to stay here because funny enough, somebody asked me this question. There is a friend I had met a few years ago, and I think he wanted to offer me a job in Luxembourg. And he said, "Oh, are you still staying in London?" And that got me thinking. I really like it in here. I think the question might pop again in my head if my situation were to change, because I like it in here for me as a driven professional, where I can do some crazy hours. Yesterday I had an all-nighter, so I still have the eye bags. So I just worked for something like 36 or 38 hours straight.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe if I were, yeah, I'm not sure how I physically did it, but I survived. But I'm thinking I would probably reassess when it comes to having children. And it might still be the UK, because I have been thinking about it might still be the UK, just maybe not central London, because I still see a lot of value in still being in the country, just that the setup might need to be a bit different. But for now, unless the next few years, I think this is it.
Yeah, and of course, nobody can predict the future. You could be here today and somewhere else tomorrow, but it's always nice to know that, that this feels like home for you, and for the foreseeable future, this is where you'd like to be. The last thing I want to ask you is something that I ask all of my my wonderful guests, and I feel it's really important to hear it from you. Being a woman, you're an expat, and you're actually living and thriving abroad. You're doing what we talk about, the whole theme of this series. But what advice would you give to someone who is considering changing their lifestyle? And again, I don't want people to think, oh, well, I'm running away from my country because of this or that. But we all, at one point in our lives, most of us have a need to just be somewhere, do something different. We have this urge, this need to just expand. But if there's someone who's kind of sitting on the fence and feeling a little unsure, and oh my God, how could I do this? There's no way that I could just pack a bag and go to another country. What advice would you give someone?
I would have a practical advice, and one that is a little bit of a pep talk, but that has worked for me. So the practical piece of advice is to really prepare. The thing is, the more you are prepared for your move, the less you feel it is daunting. Because I remember also the closer I got to leaving, the more I felt that what if it doesn't work and I have nothing to go back to? In Morocco, we don't have a social security system. One of my darkest moments in abroad was, I think, at the 3 or 4 months mark, because I knew now I was running out of money in Belgium, but I had probably no possibility of going back to my job in Morocco. So now I knew that if I had to go back, I couldn't even afford the airfare. So I think if you plan more and you just have that map in your head, at least for the first few weeks and what they're going to look like, it will be less daunting. And tell yourself that you deserve this. So that is a bit the pep talk party, because sometimes you just feel that why should I succeed when others didn't? Don't go naively about it, which is where the planning part comes, but also tell yourself you deserve it. And also for people coming from places like myself, when you do this, you're not leaving your country behind. You're elevating the profile. Keep in mind that a lot of people would call you an immigrant. The fact that Caroline calls you an expat, that is already you making a difference. And you know, you're making that shift, because whenever somebody comes from other countries, they're always called an expat. When you go, even when you're going for a good job and you're not there to leech off of society, you are called all kinds of names. And by going abroad and becoming a success story, you are part of erasing these misconceptions. And one day people will automatically start calling Moroccans, Algerians, Polish, Romanians, everybody calling them expats when they go abroad. So think that you are really contributing to elevating the profile of your country. And there is nothing to feel bad about, because you deserve the best. You're working towards it.
That's such a beautiful way to look at it. So how can we connect with you? I'm sure there are others that are just going to want to see your amazing life in London. I know you're on Instagram. What is your, we'll put a link down below, but how can we reach you? How can we connect with you?
So I'm at Ouga official on Instagram, and I also am on YouTube, where I post obviously about skincare. I also talk a lot about my life, my projects, my struggles, and I've recently joined Clubhouse also as at Ouga official for more say of unplanned kind of discussions. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. So folks can connect with you on Clubhouse. That's awesome. Ouga, this has been such an amazing experience. I am so honored to have the opportunity to talk with you and to hear your story. And I hope, not that I hope, I know that you have shed some inspiration out there for others to see and to connect with. And we look forward to seeing your adventures in social media. And I wish you lots of blessings and all good things as you live your expat life.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.